I sat up here and ate pasta, and now it's wearing off.
Oh, yeah. That's a hard one.
So I already pushed record, so I'm just going to leave that on the show. So
That's fine.
I mean, I was talking about cheese sticks.
I don't have any shame about my eating habits.
Oh, girl, no. I eat pasta. I had cheese wraps and meat salsa like 2 nights ago. I'm right there with you.
Oh, God. Cheese wraps.
Cheese wraps.
I've never heard anybody call them cheese wraps.
Cheese wraps? I mean, you usually go meat wraps, of course, but it's, cheese wraps.
Oh, definitely leave this in.
So welcome to the show.
Need to see who we actually are as human beings.
This is episode
We can't
24.
be professional all the time.
No. I mean, in their defense, the record button started sooner than I usually there's a little lag, and it was just instant. So if you start hearing the stuff about pasta and cheese wraps, that's just
cheese wraps.
This is real talk.
I think it was because I worked at an Italian restaurant, and Lena knows about it, but the Old Town Spaghetti Store in West Tennessee. And so like when people would order, it's like I got to order meat wraps, I got to order cheese wraps. So like it's just shorthand. Wow. So like I just Plus, why would you be bothered? Why would you be bothered saying ravioli when you can just say ravs?
Because ravioli is a fun word.
That's true.
Ravioli. Give me the, what is it from SpongeBob? I don't know.
I
don't remember now. I started and I was going down a road, and then I just fell off of something.
It's fine. We're gonna get a lot of SpongeBob fans sending you the lyrics.
Whoever remembers the rest of that,
please let us know. It's like Michael Scott on The Office. He's like, sometimes I just start a sentence, I don't know where I'm going to end up.
That's me every day of my life with everything that I say.
Did you, KB, did you see that thing? Someone did a custom avatar on WWE, and they did Prison Mike.
Yes.
It's incredible.
It was incredible. That's one of my favorite things about the time of year that we get a new WWE game is all of the the custom avatars, and then like the revival coming out to the Iconics entrance.
Yeah, like they were all that one.
Or Roman Reigns coming out to the Sasha Banks entrance, and he's just flipping his hair. It's amazing.
Oh,
there's our we can tick off our wrestling mention for our episode.
Well, I was going to say it was a big month. I mean, the NWA 70th, and you went to Evolution, and you also went to NXT in Orlando. I mean, I'm surprised we didn't have just an episode for wrestling.
I did all
You'll have to do like a spin-off episode.
Yeah.
Where it's like you three and then me have a break that day because I don't watch wrestling.
That's fine.
We've been threatening it. It's just so much to. Well, and I think both of us, we just canceled our WWE network.
I also think that people don't come here to listen to us talk about wrestling.
Well, we would just create a space where they did that, KB. That's how it happens,
A safe space.
If we do that, if we did like a spin-off wrestling episode, then KB and I are going to do a spin-off K-pop episode.
Oh,
yes, we are.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, yes. That we've just planned it on our own and put it up on iTunes without you knowing about it.
I am 100% here for it.
You know that I'm here for it.
That doesn't offend me at all. That's fine.
I'm already thinking all these questions I want to ask you about Twice's new song that dropped today.
Don't get me started.
I know. We'll talk about that later.
All right.
So
what's going on, guys?
This has been 5 minutes of us. And the sad thing is we're even a man down. Like we're not even full force, and we're already this far off track. So, anyways. Eli, KB, Kayla, Lena is not here with us tonight. She's here in spirit. So no fun facts this week. Sad. Sad. Yeah, so this is our first episode after Halloween. We didn't get to record one after whatever the last one was. KB traveled, I traveled. Kayla's still in another state, so we were just all over the place.
I traveled to another plane of existence for a little while. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The usual Halloween stuff that I do.
So hopefully you kept up with our movie list. We put some effort into it, and it's done now. So if you want to go back and read the reviews, and I think some of them were short. I think Mandy, I just said 4 words, and then some of them were like really long. So,
sorry.
Very
were those 4 words that movie was garbage?
I think that was the
4
review.
Words I have to say about it.
I think that's the review you were giving originally.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Hot take.
I love a hot take.
So, yeah, but anyways, tonight we are interviewing Chris LaMartina. I almost said Martini. LaMartina.
Le Martini.
Le Martini.
La Martina.
He almost.
I think that's just what he expects us to call him now.
Yeah. Well, when he was spelling it out, I was going to be like LaYmartini. Martini. Yes, Chris. Chris is the director, probably most well known for the WNUF Halloween Special, which we love. And if you did follow along with our Halloween list, movie list, that was the October 1st movie. That was the very first one we listed, and just a really cool idea. The way they did it, they did it for like almost no money whatsoever, and so just to see the acclaim they've gotten for it, and TerraVision Records ended up having like a tie-in vinyl release with it, and now we have news of a sequel that they're doing, and there's going to be a GoFundMe for that. So we just thought it was a cool chance to like kind of talk to him about some of his other works that he's done, and then all things WNUF, and then kind of give us a few little hints, nuggets about what's coming out with the sequel and all that. So that is the main focus of the show. For the beginning here, we were just going to talk about, I don't know, like I think we said like Halloween highlights maybe, or some of the stuff I like KB saw Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando. She put the video up on that. I went
and let me tell you guys that experience was, I want to say that it was awesome, but it was also very stressful, because for people that haven't been to Halloween Horror Nights, let me give you a quick rundown. You need to expect to stand in line for a house for about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Maybe an hour at least. And there's so many houses that you have to plan to basically be there until it stays open until about 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it's so late.
It's very loud. Being a person that does not like haunted houses, I had fun, but like my experience was just like kind of traumatic.
Oh no.
No, I mean, I'm not being a baby. I don't do haunted houses. I don't like people jumping out at me. Like, it's never been a thing that I've really been able to handle. I can handle it in movies. Like I can do that. But if I have a live person near me, I just am very easily startled. So, we did a couple of the houses. We did Stranger Things. Stranger Things was really cool. It was pretty scary. But when you're part of a fandom and you're going through a house and you're seeing all of these characters that you love so much, it's not that scary. So like the trick or treat house wasn't that scary. It was more about like, I felt like I was seeing the sets, and, people were jumping, like, little Sam Haines were jumping out from behind the corner, and it was exciting because I love Sam, and that's one of my favorite, all-time horror movie characters that I love. So like the experience with those 2 houses was cool, but I hadn't seen Poltergeist in a long time. So like a lot of it didn't really make a lot of sense to me, because I didn't take the time to rewatch the originals before going through the house. But I think it had a lot to do with me being so tired. As we got to the last house, and it was, Scary Tales, I think. So it was like Twisted Fairy Tales. So we go in, and the opening of it was, I was so excited because it was Wizard of Oz.
Oh,
And there was supposed to be a witch flying around, and she wasn't there. So it was just like but it was still pretty cool because you're going into like the witch's castle or whatever.
Oh, cool. And then,
before we went in, I had kind of told myself, I was like, you know what, maybe I should sit this one out. I'm really tired. There's a lot of flashing lights. It's very, very cramped. You're walking and they're right there at you. You don't have a lot of room to move around. It's very, very dark. And when I say very, very dark, like sometimes it's pitch black and then there's a strobe light. So it can be disorienting. And we got in that house and I finally turned around and looked at my husband. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm going to close my eyes and you have to guide me through this house. I can't. I feel like if I open my eyes and I let these people startle me, I'm going to have a mental breakdown. It's funny in retrospect because it's really not that big of a deal. It's all not real, but I think it was just, I was tired and I just was tired of being scared.
Oh, sure. And at a certain point you're like, over it.
Right. So I closed my eyes and they're guiding me through this house. And the only time that I opened my eyes was because I smelled gingerbread. And I opened my eyes and we're in the Hansel and Gretel house, but Gretel is laying on the table with her intestines everywhere. And I was like, nope, gonna close my eyes again. So I closed my eyes. And then that turns all of your other senses a little bit higher. So everything was louder. So I hear all of these gurgling sounds in my ears and people screaming. And by the time we got out, I was like, y'all, I gotta go to bed. But it's a massive, massive thing. And it is truly an experience. Like all of the scare zones with the Killer Clowns from Outer Space and Chucky and all of that stuff was super cool. My favorite part was the 80s vampires. So they were also were they in 80s attire, they had some dressed up as famous musicians of the 80s. So there was a vampire prince and vampire Run DMC, and it was just they were just everywhere, and they were so much fun because they'll fuck with you and they'll get in your face, but they're not aggressive or anything. I watched one guy, it was a 80s punk rock vampire with a kilt on, scare this girl, and she sees, and he's standing right in front of her. He scares her and she jumps, and then he waits a second and then he scares her again, and it gets her so badly that she took a step backward and just ate shit. So it's a fun experience. I'm not super sure that I would ever do it again. I think I would go just to hang out, but it's also, pretty expensive. But it's fun. I think that people that like haunted houses and do haunted houses every Halloween will have a fantastic time. You just have to prepare yourself for the mass amounts of people.
Yeah.
But as a person that doesn't do haunted houses and doesn't like haunted houses, I probably won't go back. I don't know.
But it's worth it for one time. Even if you just everybody should go once.
For sure. You should eat if you are, especially if they have a house that is a fandom that you're a big fan of. So we were super excited about Stranger Things. So it was definitely worth it. It's definitely I think for me personally, I probably won't do it again. Not because I had a bad experience, just because haunted houses just aren't my thing. So,
yeah. I was surprised when you said you guys were going.
It's all very well done. They, I went with one of my friends that works in the park, so she knows a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and the Stranger Things team and the Netflix team were very particular about who played what character, and they had to pre-screen all of these people, and there were tons of auditions. So that was cool. I think that for me next year, if I decide to go back in October, I'll actually do the daytime tour where you can go through the houses with the lights on just to see the setups.
Yeah.
because that's more where my interest lies. So there's my spiel about Halloween Horror Nights. It's fun, but I probably won't do it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of was hoping to go back this year. Lena and I went in 2013, not together, just at the same time. And The Walking Dead was the big thing. It was like
nope.
Yeah, it was on like season 3 or 4, so it was like at its height. So
if it was zombies, you best believe my ass would not be there.
Well, so they had some of this, like the zones were Walking Dead, and like they had like, you know, the camper from one of the first seasons, and there was a truck with like Daryl's crossbow on it, and it's just like all the props were laying around, but then you could walk into the different zones. But like throughout the whole park, they just had walkers just walking at all times, and they would jump up in you.
No, thank you.
So that was the main thing. But like they had Evil Dead was one of the houses, which you might have liked. They had a Resident Evil house. They had Cabin in the Woods.
Cool. That'd be so cool.
Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. That'd be so fun.
Let's see. American Werewolf in London was kind of underwhelming. I was pretty bummed with that one. They had one called Urban Legends. It was a La Llorona. It's like a Mexican folklore.
La Llorona?
Yeah.
La Llorona. Yeah. Cool.
They had one called Afterlife Death's Vengeance, and it's about some serial killer. I don't know. And then they had like they call them scare zones. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Walking Deads. And then they had this Bill and Ted Halloween show that was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so I don't know.
My favorite scare zone was these crazy pumpkin people. Like they had people on stilts, and they were like these deformed pumpkin creatures, and it was so cool. This one guy was like lit up from the inside. It was amazing. That was my favorite.
I saw some of the like they had the live action Chucky and.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Yeah,
and Chucky just talked shit the entire time. It was a lot of fun.
So I think I don't know. I'm like you. I didn't know that there was a daytime tour when we went, so I kind of missed out on that. And the lines it's just a combination of, you know, the residents. They'll just go like that's where they go for their haunted houses. So like where we go to Nashville Nightmare, those things, like they just go to Universal. So you have that plus all the people coming in from all over the world. So, I think our average wait was about an hour and a half at all the houses. So it doesn't really feel like you're seeing much, but
it's definitely intense.
Yeah, but it's definitely. I agree. I would at least try to check it out once. I want to go again just because I do like haunted houses. So cool.
Sweet.
So I think we're going to talk about. So I did see Halloween. Me and Lena saw it a couple days before it was released. So that was cool. And then I just saw Suspiria. Has anybody else tried to check it out, or is it just
No, I think Aaron and I are going to go see it. It's maybe this weekend. He's really interested in seeing it with me too.
Okay.
I have not decided if I'm going to go see it or not. So we'll see.
I know Eli and I talked about this a little bit. So
let's just leave it because
we might unpack it later. Yeah.
Well,
and we can unpack it later after we've all seen it.
Yeah, and I think we can just go to like we were talking about. You know, Netflix killed it in October.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't even remember that they put out Daredevil, the new season of Daredevil slipped in.
I know. It just showed up one day, and Aaron and I were like, we're too busy. Like, we're watching Sabrina, watching Haunted of Hill House. There was just so many.
Haunting of Hill House was so good.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
It was so amazing.
I got my brothers to watch it. When I was done with it, I was like, I need to call my whole family. They all need to watch it. I need to like hug all my family and cry. It was so good. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it was really well done. I was reading, the director, Mike Flanagan, I guess. He posted on Twitter about the episode 6 long take, the long take episode.
That was amazing.
Yeah, he was talking about how they filmed that and how originally it was going to be like the last episode they did, but with the budget started running out, so they moved it up. So they kind of had to change things on the fly.
But God, that was so good.
So I guess let's just name what was a highlight for everybody for Halloween. Was there a particular show or TV show or movie or KB, maybe it was Halloween Horror Nights. I mean, what was a highlight for the season?
I think Haunting of Hill House actually was for me. That and Castlevania, because I'm just such a big Castlevania fan. That show was so good. Mm-hmm. So finally getting a second season for that was really exciting. But Haunting of Hill House kind of took it for me. It was such a good show.
Yeah, I would agree with that with Haunting of Hill House. I loved it so much, and I was a little skeptical about it too because I'm a big fan of the book, and I knew that it was different, and I knew that he had changed a lot, but it really blew me away. I was really impressed, and I also really loved the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina too. Mm-hmm. It was just like, I don't know.
I haven't gotten to watch it yet.
Oh, it's so fun, and I feel
I've heard it's amazing.
It's so fun, and I think that that's really, really what I needed. Was I feel like with like politics and just like the world, I get really down about things really easily if I start thinking about like elephants and global warming.
Me too.
I get like really sad.
I get so down.
I get so down really easily, and I think I've just been kind of mired in that kind of nastiness right now. And so Sabrina came on, and it was like, it was over the top and bright and like cheesy and like devilly, and the costumes were awesome, and it was sassy, and it was exactly what I needed to see at the right time. I think.
Okay, I need to watch it.
It was, it's it just takes you into like another world, and you just don't feel sad, and it's just, I don't know, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really good. So I think those two were my highlights.
Yeah, I would probably echo that. I will say, they just, at the very end of the month, they released Don't Watch This. And I mean, it was like 25 minutes. It's just these short little, one was like a 2-minute thing. One was like a 9-minute thing. I mean, they're just little short films that they threw together, and it was pretty good. Creeped Out, I think we've talked about.
Yes!
It's kind of like a modern, I don't know, Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark? I got about 4 or 5 episodes in, and it's really good. And I think it's just kind of they're walking that line of some things are just fun if they're spooky. You don't have to be super gross and super gory. And so I've enjoyed those. Apostle, I think Kayla watched.
Yes,
that one was a little bit more gory, a little bit more graphic.
I'd like to watch it.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It was a little bit more intense. I thought it was a little too long for the content that they had. I don't know. It just didn't seem a lot, but I'll watch anything that Dan Stevens does because I think that he's amazing. So I was perfectly happy to watch Dan Stevens run around being like dirty and heroic for a couple, like 90 minutes or so. It was great.
I think it was 6 hours actually.
It felt like 6 hours. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason it felt like way too long. Yeah, it was a lot.
So that,
but Dan Stevens.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, but it's just wild that we, I think any other month that might have been like the pick of the month, but there's just so much stuff that they put out this season. It was just, they kind of got lost in the wash a little bit.
Yeah.
Halloween obviously came out. It did what it did. Some mixed stuff about it.
It did.
It did what it did.
Did what it did.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
I mean, I've found a couple little nitpicky stuff the second time I watched it. A couple continue. What is the word I'm thinking of?
Continuity.
Thank you. I was like, that's not coming out of my mouth right. Hang on.
I think I know what he's trying to do.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was just like,
no, you're fine.
I think I was trying to say continuous, but it was coming out like continuously. But that's similar, but it's not okay. Anyways, there's a few little things like that were kind of, I don't think took away from it, but I just noticed more the second time. And, I've told my friends, like, I think this was the best story that they could do with including Lori in a modern setting without it being just stupid. You know what I mean? Like, I think this was the best version we were going to get. If there's more, cool. I mean, I'm cool with it. I'm hoping that some of the other franchises kind of take a look at it, and maybe we'll get a new Friday the 13th or a new Freddy or whatever. I will say Robert Englund was on the Goldbergs dressed up as Freddy, so that was cool. Me being a huge Freddy nerd, that I don't think he was in the episode long enough, so that was a little bummed, but it was really awesome. And what else was I going to say? Oh, I haven't watched the reboot of Roseanne just because of all the fallout and crap, but I did check out the Halloween episode, and it was such a letdown. Like, that series was always known for their cool Halloween episodes.
Yeah.
It was just, so that was a little, I wasn't expecting much, but I was like, well, hopefully they'll at least kill it with this, and it wasn't that great.
That's a bummer.
But yeah, it's kind of I've mentioned to some friends, I don't know, something about this season just I was kind of bummed about. I don't know. Like, I think it might have been last year, I guess probably the excitement of starting the show with you guys and getting that started. And, I think, I don't know, maybe that just added to the excitement. But this year I don't know, I think it was the combination of, like, the temperatures were warmer, like I wore shorts today to work. I mean, I'm still in, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't really get to fall weather, and I don't know, maybe we were all just kind of busy this season and we didn't get to do as much with the show as we did last year. I don't know what it is, but something just didn't feel, I don't know, there's like an asterisk besides this Halloween season for me for some reason. So
yeah, some Halloweens are like that, and it's hard to put your finger on, but I think we have very high expectations for Halloween, and I think it can be tough to fit in everything that we want to do or feel like we should do. Yeah. I feel like that's tough. I feel like that a lot with Halloween, and I know other people feel that way with Christmas. I do not, but I feel like Halloween, I would just want to do everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, make the best of it, but, something's missing in my heart, so.
Yeah. Well.
So on that note, so that was our kind of that may have been the most random start of the show we've ever done. We started talking about pasta and cheese wraps, and
cheese wraps.
Then we're just ending with me being heartbroken about Halloween. So,
there's still so many good things about Halloween too. And I mean,
as we speak, I have my orange lights in my room lit up. One is basically they're pumpkins. They're like jack-o'-lanterns that light up, and the other are just like Christmas lights, but they're orange. So I'm kind of getting the spooky vibes in here. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah. So
keep it alive.
So yeah, I guess since we didn't really have much to talk about, I guess we'll just take a break and go into our interview. And
it's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Chris is
so much fun that I can't actually form words.
No, that's my thing. Yeah, that's my
Chris
gimmick.
Was awesome.
I'm supposed to not be able to say words like a human.
I think we can all manage that.
Yeah. So, well, cool. When we come back, interview with Chris LaMartina. All right, and joining us tonight on the show, it's a director of one of our favorite films here in the last little bit. If you followed along with our Halloween movie list this year, it was the first one listed for October 1st, the WNUF Halloween Special. And we were talking about it before we got Chris on, and we were talking about the the vinyl record release, and how Frank Stewart is just a treasure. And so we just love the project. It's just so well done. And when we got wind of doing the sequel and a lot of the fun videos that were coming out for that, we really wanted to get him on and talk about past stuff, talk about the new project. Maybe he'll slip us some Easter eggs, what he can and can't say, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're joined with Chris LaMartina. I think I just butchered it again. Sorry. You just told me like 2 minutes ago and I butchered it.
It's all good.
So how's it going, man?
Now we have to just say Le Martini.
Le Martini.
Just go full wrong.
Yeah.
Just go full wrong.
Yeah. Le Martini.
Just say it like 6 different ways through the course of the episode.
I mean, we last year
notice, yeah.
Last year we interviewed Linnea Quigley, and like as soon as we started, I was like, Linnea Quigley. And I was like, and like KB was instantly like, you butchered that. Like, just, yeah. So.
Head in hand.
I shouldn't be trusted with speaking, I don't think. So.
Says the host.
Says the host.
Yeah, so. Welcome to our show.
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out with us and dealing with us.
Yeah.
There's lots of giggling ahead.
Yeah. So the first question, just right off the bat, tell us about your background, how you got started, how you made your mark, especially as like an independent director.
Sure. So, I started making movies when I was, when I was a little kid, like 10 or 12, that era. I was just making stop motion animation movies. I started making slasher flicks. When I was 14, I had seen enough sort of really bad shot on video movies where I wanted to try to, make my own thing. So when I was 14, I made a movie called Amerikill, which was like this slasher comedy. And I shot everything in sequence. And like it was this crazy thing where when the camera stopped and started, those were my edits. So it was all in-camera editing, as it's called. And so there's only 3 VCR edits in the final edit of the movie. And we showed that at a movie theater in Baltimore when I was 14. And I sort of the first time I showed a movie to an audience and I got a laugh or a gross out reaction, I sort of caught the bug. And I started getting obsessed with making more movies. And then I'm trying to think to truncate this very quickly. Like I've been producing true features since 2006, and I met Jimmy George, who was my collaborator for the original WNUF in 2000. In 2006, we started working on our second feature, a movie called Book of Lore, and somewhere down the line, I just came with the idea of really enjoying making horror comedies, and modestly budgeted. The budgets have been anywhere from $300 to $40,000, and we just try to put as much production value on the screen as possible.
That's awesome.
That's a great description. That was like very succinct, very.
I know.
I can't do that as a person. You asked me a question and I have to give you my whole life story. So I'm just very impressed by that.
Well, it's funny. I feel like I try to do things as fast as possible, which is dangerous when you talk fast because sometimes folks won't understand you. But I have a career in marketing and advertising.
That'll do it.
So like you sort of get used to doing the elevator pitch. Like I always approach every conversation like this person probably doesn't give a shit about what I have to say, so I better get it out as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible.
I appreciate that, especially as like movies get longer and books get longer.
Yes.
It's just, I now appreciate like a good solid, like 250 page novel. Like nailed it.
Right.
Like, thank you.
Give me a movie that's an hour and a half or like episodes that are 25 minutes long. Give me that all day.
I always joke that I'd love if all feature films were just 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
It would be like
and I was really excited when I turned on the WNUF Halloween Special and it was like an hour and 18 minutes or something. I was like, oh, bliss.
We love that. We love that.
For sure.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I thought it was really cool when you mentioned that you started making or showed the movie in a movie theater when you were 14. Like, that's pretty amazing. And I was curious, what were some of your major influences and favorite movies growing up?
Sure. So I guess my first, like the gateway drug into horror stuff was I would watch like, old Hammer horror movies with my dad, like when Turner Classic Movies would show them or things like that. But then there's a couple things. Like I grew up like loving the Ghostbusters, so things that were spooky and things like that were just like part of my learning experience growing up. And I was partially raised by my very superstitious Italian Catholic godmother, and she would tell me stories of the saints, and I learned about stigmata at a very young age, and that was kind of funny. We used to go visit relatives in the graveyard, this big cemetery in Baltimore, and so she had no problem like buying me videotapes of like horror movies. And I'll never forget, I'd really loved the cartoon Toxic Crusaders, so when I was like 6 years old or so, she bought me a copy, not knowing what kind of movie it was. She bought me a copy of Toxic Avenger. And that, wow. I mean, that movie totally, it really, I think it scarred me, but I think in a good way. Cause I think it was like, I'd never seen a movie that was low budget like that, but, and granted, there's some things that a 6-year-old should not have seen, obviously. But that always stuck with me. And then I think the other movie that was really, really influential from a standpoint of like, almost like when you see the Ramones play, and somebody goes, "Oh shit! Like 3 chords, I could write a song, right?" The movie that did that for me was when they were showing a very severely edited version of Evil Dead on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was I think it was called Zombie Week. It was like probably like in the 1994, 95, and Rob Zombie hosted this. And this version of Evil Dead, yeah, I'm hearing myself now. This is weird. Hold on. Okay, it's gone now. Okay. But what I was gonna say was when I saw this version of Evil Dead on broadcast TV, it was like, it was so rough around the edges. I'd never seen a film that was really that rough around the edges. That's sort of gritty 16 millimeter. The very clear like continuity errors between, when people's wigs changed, and I loved it. And there was this sort of moment where I was like, dude, this makes me want to make something. And I think for me, that's always been an important part of my creative output. Like I want to be inspiring to other filmmakers. And Evil Dead did that for me. And then subsequently other influences for me is I don't know how many of the references, because there's plenty of references to 80s horror movies in WNUF, but there's also a lot of references to shot on video horror film pioneers. People like the Polonia brothers, J.R. Bookwalter, Todd Sheets. That stuff was really important to me as a creator, because it's not just really about what you make, it's really what you make possible. And those guys were sort of they kicked open the door to say, hey, you don't need $1 million to make a movie that's entertaining.
Well, speaking of money and where you started and how you started creating, your first few features, Dead Teenagers, Book of Lore, Great Mistakes, what were the budgets like for those? How did those come about, and how did you start that journey?
Yeah, so Dead Teenagers truly was an excuse to see if I had the stamina to finish a feature, and then also to get it commercially distributed. So Dead Teenagers was shot for $300. It was shot on consumer camcorders, so just like a mini DV camera on tapes that I had quote unquote liberated from stores. It was made beg, borrow, steal. There's very few things we actually purchased for that movie. Maybe some fake blood, maybe some clothes that ended up getting ruined, maybe some monster makeup, but it was really cheap. And then that movie got released, it got distributed, and it was really cool. It was actually, we had this moment where I realized, like, okay, I made a movie now how do I actually make a decent movie? And Dead Teenagers is fine. Like there's certain things when you think about a kid 18 or 19 years old, where for the majority of that film, I was the only crew. Like literally like lighting the scene, shooting the scene, directing the scene, doing the makeup. So that was pretty cool. When we made Book of Lore, that's when Jimmy and I first started working together. That budget was about $8,000. We ended up taking some serious time to write that script and did like 3 drafts of it. So, and then Book of Lore, I mean, that was really probably the most, it's the most like, I guess, it feels like the structure, it's more of a mystery than a horror film. So it's interesting, but I mean, looking back, there's things I definitely wouldn't do, but it was a good learning experience of in screenwriting. That was my sort of like my major class in screenwriting, was making that movie. Just learning what succeeds and what fails. But to go quickly through the rest of the stuff. After that, Grave Mistakes was shot for about $1,000, because we realized none of these movies had made any real money yet. So we wanted to do scale it back. President's Day was shot for, I think, $5,000. Witch's Brew was shot for $16,000. WNUF Halloween Special was shot for $1,500.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Call Girl of Cthulhu was shot for $40,000, maybe 41 when all is said and done. And then the one that we have in post production that should be finished. It's literally getting color corrected in the next month. Is a movie called What Happens Next Will Scare You, and that was shot for I think about $5,000 or so.
And it's amazing if you're just conscious about what you're doing, how much money you really just don't need to make a good movie.
Exactly.
And, even I think in 2018, it's really interesting that we're drawn to now that nostalgia of the, and I say this in a nice way, the shitty quality of the 80s. It's supposed to look bad. And,
yes.
Eli collects VHS tapes. I mean, we have Blu-ray and 4K TVs, but we're drawn to that, subpar quality because it makes us feel like it's just a little bit more real, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I've always looked at it like it was like there's a romanticism to video because it makes us think about growing up. It gives us that it's a nice warm taste of nostalgia. It makes it feel familiar. It makes it it just brings back a really good feeling in most of us who grew up watching horror movies or sneaking down to the basement late at night to watch like a UHF channel or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it goes along with video store culture too, because you had I'm from West Tennessee, and we had a Blockbuster, but it was on the north side of town. So it was a special thing to go to Blockbuster. But we had a bunch of the mom and pop stores. We had one that was basically, they had like a tanning salon, and you could rent movies.
Yes,
all that kind of stuff. Captain Video, Video Rental South, Hollywood Video, all that kind of stuff. So it was just kind of that. Got straight A's. Cool. Let's go rent a video game and rent a movie. Hey, we're having a sleepover. Let's go rent 3 movies for the weekend. And it just that whole thing. So it wasn't just the, because it's kind of like what KB was saying. We have, not only the highest quality of images you could possibly get up to this point. I mean, I can push 3 buttons and pretty much watch any movie I ever wanted to watch. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's just that connection to being younger and then, going to a location where there was other people that had, they wanted that experience as well. So, so I think it kind of ties into all that. So
for sure.
So that got off track a little bit. So the first, I don't know if you want to call it, maybe the most mainstream-ish movie that you did was President's Day. Not in, I don't know, just the actual story, I guess, is what I mean by mainstream.
Sure. Yeah.
Just slasher. How did you get from? Did you do the 3 first? Was it Dead Teenagers, Book of Lore, Grave Mistakes, and then President's Day?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
So how did you get to President's Day? How did you get there? After Grave Mistakes, how was it okay, we got to do this? And then the actual process of making it, and then getting it into film festivals, because a lot of people don't know that process.
Sure. Yeah. So with basically Grave Mistakes started, and I have to set up President's Day. I have to talk about Grave Mistakes. When we were making Grave Mistakes, we made it essentially because we were we didn't want to not make a movie, and I knew we didn't have a feature script ready to go, so we made another anthology. And Grave Mistakes was I think 4 segments plus a wraparound, and Dead Teenagers was an anthology as well. So when we were making Grave Mistakes, something changed about how I approached storytelling. Was I really started thinking about high concept, and for those unfamiliar, high concept is basically a plot that you can describe in a single sentence, right? Something that you could say the elevator pitch is the essence of the story. Whereas Book of Lore, I mean, I could break the synopsis down into 20 seconds, but you don't really get the general thrust of the movie. And I think it's something that actually started making me think about a career in marketing as well, because I got really good at coming up with a title, a log line, and essentially a poster image that would sell the movie immediately, right? So with Grave Mistakes, we started thinking about what I would call our and something I still do to this day is I would typically come up with the title first, and then I would say, okay, what's that movie? If that's the title, what's the movie about? So Grave Mistakes, we did one of the segments. I'm trying to think of one of the segments. A picture's worth 1,000 screams, and it ends up becoming about spirit photography. Dead Men Do Tell Tales, about a writer that summons someone back from the dead. So all these stories sort of came with titles first, then a plot would develop. And then with President's Day, it was weird. There's been for a while now this resurgence of slasher movies, and I love slasher movies. But I also felt like the thing that I loved about 80s slasher movies was the novelty of connecting it to some goofy thing like a holiday or like a profession, right? Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking about what would be the most absurd holiday or what would be the most absurd visual to pair that with. And I originally just wanted to do President's Day as like a short. And then Jimmy came up with the idea of actually setting it at a high school student council election. So basically, and it was essentially a horror version of Election, right? Like the Reese Witherspoon movie. And I thought that was brilliant because, I'm a political junkie. I'm obsessed with following politics and campaigns and things like that. So like when he pitched that to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is finally the way I can. All the characters in President's Day are based on all the teachers are based on Republicans in the 2008 primary, and all the students are all the Democrats in the 2008 primary.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So if you watch the movie now, you could be like, okay, Barry is obviously Barack Obama. Joe is Joe Biden. So like it's pretty crazy. I mean, and then you have things just like, there's a lot of intricacies. If you're a political junkie, if you watch the movie again, you can get little things based off the 2008 presidential cycle. But I'm trying to see. I'm diverging from the initial question initially here. But so we when we made President's Day, the script on that was pretty easy because it's a very straightforward slasher movie. And then what we had more fun was making an ensemble film. The other thing that changed between Grave Mistakes and President's Day was we really understood now what distributors wanted, so we amped up the gore, we put more nudity in, and it was very much like this is marketable, whereas like Book of Lore and Grave Mistakes were more like we're making movies and gaining our footing, but we really didn't have a grasp on everybody says they make art for themselves, and I do believe there's plenty of art that is personal, but if people don't see your art, if they can't find it or react to it, like you're suffering at a loss, right? So like so that's what President's Day was us realizing, like we've got to get eyeballs on this stuff, and there's certain ways that we can do that. You asked about film festivals. What we did for film festivals, for any filmmakers listening, was we specifically targeted horror film festivals to submit because we knew we weren't going to play Sundance or Cannes. Like it was just stupid and a waste of money. But we also looked at we're very practical people. I've always tried to be realistic in how we make movies and how we market those movies, and how it doesn't make sense to do something and fail if you didn't think it through initially. So for President's Day's festival run, we would look up all the festivals that other films that we thought were similar budget level and similar entertainment value had won or played. Mm-hmm. So we would go and even if somebody said, hey, you should submit to Screamfest or whatever, I would look up Screamfest and be like, okay, so the movie that won Best Picture last year is clearly a $2 million movie. We're not going to enter that one. Like we would not do that.
You got to play it smart.
Exactly.
Sure.
And honestly, like festivals sometimes can feel like a racket, like because it's like, each one is submission fees of $50. Like how many festivals can you really submit to when your movie's being made for $5,000? Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, like, festivals have a huge value in our scene, but I'm not going to put aside like a quarter of the budget for festivals. Like that's absurd to me. I want the money on the screen.
Yeah, and a lot of times, that's not even a guarantee. Like you submit it, you do the huge application, you pay the $50, and then you still may not even be admitted into the film festival. So
and I've learned a lot that not all festivals, but there's plenty of festivals that know what movies are playing 2 months before the deadlines have ended. Yeah,
and that's
really not cool. Yeah, I think that's really dishonest. So
yeah, that's a drag.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah. And I think you mentioned this earlier too, like about how expensive. There's a movie who at this festival it's $2 million, and I think most people realize now how expensive that filmmaking can be. But I know you mentioned President's Day was made for like $5,000.
Yeah.
How do you manage to create quality movies with a really small budget? Sure. How do you do it? I think that's a really...
One of the things that was interesting about President's Day and all the ones after that, I'd say, with the exception of WNUF, because it's supposed to look cheap, and I shot a lot of that myself. The other ones after we finished, I shot Dead Teenagers and Book of Lore and most of Grave Mistakes myself, with the exception of the wraparounds of Grave Mistakes. But there's something to be said for people who finish projects. Like finishing a feature film is like, even a shitty feature film, if you finish it, I have an immense amount of respect for anyone who just finishes like an 80-minute or 90-minute movie, right? So something that happened around Baltimore where people are like, oh, Chris makes movies and he actually finishes them and screens them, and they're not half bad, right? I'm not even gonna say they were good. It's more just like, oh, he is known as someone that accomplishes things and gets shit done. So there was a large group of folks that were like, well, shit, I'm a gaffer, or I'm a director of photography, or I'm a sound guy, and I'd like to be on a team that finishes a movie. Sure. rather than just short films, or rather than, the movie that this guy's been working on for the last 8 years and still hasn't finished. So when we shot the Grave Mistakes wraparound, my buddies Joe Davidson and Dan Tyag, they were like, we know you finished stuff. We want to have something else for our portfolio. Can we shoot the wraparound? And I've never. I'm very open about this. I don't, it's I wish I could do this, but I wish I could pay folks. But the fact is, the budgets aren't designed that way, right? Sure. But most of the crew on this stuff has worked for food. But even then, it's one of those things where we'd make these movies and people were just excited to make something that was fun to make. We had my buddy Mark Burchick, who is now a great gaffer. He was on the set for Call Girl, and we were cleaning up blood one night, and he turned to Jimmy and he
casually.
Said, yeah. And exactly right. It's always casually cleaning up blood. And he turns to Jimmy, and goes, when you grow up watching movies and wanting to make movies, these are the type of movies you want to make. And it's like something like that. It's like And I'm careful how I say this, because people should be paid for their art. I'm not saying otherwise. But when you don't pay someone for something and they're still there with you till 3 a.m, they're there because they love it and you share passion with them. And to be honest with you, those are the folks I want to make movies with.
And that produces a good product. Mm-hmm. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody has the same passion to produce something that's going to, you're not going to look back on and be like, oh, well, I, maybe wish that I'd done that a little bit different. Or, I'm sure you still have those feelings, but yeah, you watch it and you're like, okay, I did this. I'm proud of it. What now? Like, what am I going to do next? Like, you're not harping on, what you could have changed or what you could have done more. It's just exactly what you wanted it to be. So that's,
you can't rest on your laurels. And I think it's like, social media is kind of the scariest part about this, is like you're fighting for relevance every day. Which sometimes I get like, it's like, I don't really, I'm not going to post horror meme after horror meme every day. If I don't have anything interesting to say, I'll just shut the fuck up. But you know what I mean? Like, it's, you definitely got to keep thinking about what's your next opportunity.
Well, speaking of your next opportunity, we're going to talk about Witch's Brew before we get into WNUF.
Sure.
Everybody loves a horror comedy. So, this is one that I'm definitely excited about talking about, and you're talking about being relevant. And I think that horror comedy is definitely a lot more relative, especially in the past, 5 to 10 years. A lot of good horror movies still have that comedic element, and they can, be so terribly scary at the same time, but putting in those laughs and then being able to catch you off guard is always a good thing. So tell us about, the development of Witch's Brew, and how did the production work out for you?
Sure. So Witch's Brew was one of those that started with the title. So like I had been really into like curse movies. Like I had just seen when we were making that, or like a year or so before we made that, I think Drag Me to Hell had come out. I was fascinated by the Stephen King novel, or Richard Bachman novel, I guess I should say, Thinner. I just love the idea of curses. and like body horror or things that happen to your body. And maybe that's because I'm type 1 diabetic and I know one day my body will be destroyed. But like it was one of those things where I was fascinated by that, and I was like, I'd like to make a witchcraft movie, and I came with the title Witch's Brew, and I was like, that's a cool term. And I was like, what would a movie called Witch's Brew be about? And of course, brew, beer, witches, curse beer. Got it. That's the plot, right? And then knowing that, and then I grew up loving the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I was like, it'd be really fun to do sort of gruesome, ironic deaths for characters. Like, somebody's worried about going bald, but their twist is that they turn into a werewolf rather than going bald. Things like that, or like a guy, like a Vietnam vet who's paralyzed. His legs come back to life, but then they kick him in the face, right? So like there's insane stuff, right? So Witch's Brew, I wrote that one by myself, and we ended up we needed to raise some serious money for that, and that was when Kickstarter first started. We ended up raising, I think, about $13,000 on Kickstarter to make that one, and I think another couple thousand from some private investors. But that project was really intense. We shot on the hottest summer that I can remember, but it might just be the hottest summer because we were outside for most of it. I mean, there were so many takes where like, oh, cool, our continuity is screwed up because everyone's pit stains are much worse now. And I'm trying to think what else sticks out from the production of that movie. Well, in my personal life, what was tough was I was working at the mayor's office in Baltimore City, and I had gotten laid off right before we started shooting that movie. And my health insurance, this is crazy, man. Literally the plan was to, I got laid off, and I was like, I was going to move to Los Angeles, make an honest run at being a horror filmmaker, like cool, whatever. But I remember my health insurance was insanely high. I had to use Cobra insurance. My health insurance ended up going to like $900 a month. And like I said, I was type 1 diabetic. Like I had no way to pay for insulin. It was awesome. And I was really upset, and I remember there was this moment where this is more of an emotional story than you probably expected to hear, talking about werewolves and fake blood. But I remember just being devastated, and I told Jimmy, I was like, maybe we should just not make this movie. Maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe I need to just get a job, not spend the next month shooting a horror film. Like I'm kind of screwed. I'm probably gonna have to move back in with my parents. Like this is an awful situation. And Jimmy was like, okay, well, just give it one day and see how it goes. So the first part of the day sucked. It was like we were shot at this liquor store. It was a mess. And then the next part of the day was a death scene where someone actually essentially shits out intestines. And so we're shooting this scene in my parents' garage. We built these wild wall set. We have a fake toilet that we've or a real toilet, but it's not actually plugged in, that we got from Habitat for Humanity. And we're shooting this scene, and I'm super stressed out. And we finally got to this moment where this fake blood blasts out from a cannon and shoots out behind my buddy Paul, who's the actor in the scene. And I always describe that this moment when the blood hit the back of the toilet seat, it was like that moment changed the whole process for me, and I became like, no, this is fun. Like who the fuck else gets to do this? Like I'm making a horror movie right now. People would kill to be making a horror movie with a crew and legit production value. And there was this moment where it became that movie became everything to me at that time in my life. I mean, I was going through a pretty tough situation, and it was it turned it around. It made me realize what horror movies meant to me and what storytelling meant to me. And from that point forward, it was Witch's Brew became a blast. Even though it was super stressful at times, it was way more exciting than it was just get this movie done, then move to LA, which ironically I didn't end up doing.
I mean, you talk about it being an emotional story, and it's not what we expect, but that's part of it. That's part of the journey, and that was, probably a lot of the emotion and the dedication that you put into that movie. So that's actually a really cool thing to hear. You find what you love, and it gets you through some tough shit sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is not related to the next question, but it's just, I think it's interesting because I've done this before with songwriting, but writing the title down first. And so it's kind of interesting to see that you've applied that for, filmmaking. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know if I've heard anybody say that they've done that. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, in my old band, we would just write down, and, sometimes it would just kind of write itself, like, oh, well, this is about. So I guess you're just doing it on a much bigger scale,
For sure. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So probably, I think as of right now, obviously you're right in the middle of everything, but probably right now your biggest claim to fame is probably the WNUF Halloween Special. I don't think that's incorrect to say. I think that's probably, the one that's gotten you the most buzz, and you're working on the sequel and everything. So it's probably the biggest one for now. We love it, of course. Like I said, we made that the number one movie for our Halloween list this year, and as you'll hear later, I bought the vinyl off from TerraVision. Just love the whole thing. How did the idea come about? What was the budget for that one? I know that a lot of the stuff you did yourself, and you filmed it that way on purpose because that's the way it was supposed to look. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes, I guess, that helped with maybe some of the stories and commercials and stuff like that. So. And in this one, you can go as long as you want. You don't have to do an elevator pitch, just however much time you want to talk about.
Sure thing. Okay, so coming up with the story. So what had happened was Witch's Brew took a long time to finish. We had some sound problems. 25% of the movie had to be ADR'd. I ended up spending a long time working on the post-production of that movie, mostly because we didn't have a dedicated DIT person logging all the clips. So the post-production workflow was a mess. I mean, I spent a year in post on that, which was painful for someone who's as impatient as I am. So we were coming on, I think the first or second summer in years where we hadn't made a movie. And I told Jimmy, I was like, man, I really want to make another feature, but I don't know how. I got this itch to make another movie. And I started thinking, I was like, honestly, man, the only way we could make another movie was if we made a found footage movie. And we kept thinking about that. And I've always I don't really like found footage movies, which is funny because I mean, there's I love the Blair Witch Project, right? And there's a couple other ones that stick out in my head as cool movies, but there's very few that are as masterful, I think, as the Blair Witch. And I ended up working on a movie in the interim, in between Witch's Brew and WNUF, on a movie called Lovely Molly, which was produced by Ed Sanchez, who was the co-creator of Blair Witch Project, and I was one of the producers for their social media, what they called transmedia content, story extension for that universe. And as we were doing this, I was like, man, this is so much fun. This world building stuff that they're doing is something that really excites me, because it's sort of like when you're a kid and you're playing with action figures and you come up with all these weird mythology and intricate storylines where it's it might it's all connected and all over the place. And I kept thinking about how you could do that sort of thing with the movie. So going back to thinking about the found footage stuff, what we did was we sat down and we wrote a list of the things we hated about found footage movies. So the first thing was immediately I think about the second something fucked up happens and someone keeps rolling, keeps the cameras rolling, you're like, okay, this is bullshit, right? This would not happen in real life. So it's okay, the conceit of the story, why are they filming this, was number one. Number two, it's so monotonous. So many found footage movies just feel like it's one location, minimal actors. I get bored so fast. I need something to break it up. So
yes.
I'm writing these down to make sure I say them the solutions in order. And then the third one was, okay, the second you buy a found footage movie in a store with a UPC code, it's not real. And the whole point of found footage movies is to make it feel real, right? Okay, so we started thinking about it. I was like, well, why are we filming this thing? Well, maybe if they stop filming this thing, they lose advertising revenue, or they lose money, or they lose their jobs, right? This is life or death to them, because it's their livelihood, right? So we started thinking what if it was a video, what if it actually was a TV broadcast, which had been done before in various capacities. I mean, hell, there's the Halloween, was it H2O? Is it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and then we were thinking but no one has ever done it where it was legitimately taped off TV. And if that was the case, you could actually use commercials to break up that monotony, right? So that whole idea of one location, minimal actors, no, we could literally break up the movie and make insane 80s style commercials. And then finally, the third thing with the idea of UPC codes, when we released the movie was released for the first 3 months on VHS only. And prior to that official release of VHS, my then girlfriend, now wife, we drove around. We would make the first batch of movies, screeners we made were just VHS tapes with a white spine label that said WNUF Halloween Special. We'd drive around, we'd throw them out the window, we'd leave them in horror convention bathrooms. We'd put them in thrift stores. So people would like some people found these things like what the fuck is this? Additionally, we put it on Cinemageddon with a fake blurb that said, my godmother Mary Lou taped this on Halloween night 1987. It's one of my favorite tapes. You guys got to check it out. I can't believe they aired this. And then people would start commenting like, God bless Aunt Mary Lou. So that was the shtick to sort of keep it as look, going into WNUF in 5 minutes, it's not real, but it's sort of like, you don't want to tell a 5-year-old that Santa Claus isn't real, right? It's like, that's part of the fun. Like, suspend your disbelief and have a good time watching something that someone is trying to create an experience for you.
Absolutely. That's really cool. And we mentioned earlier too, we love this movie so much, but especially love intrepid investigative reporter Frank Stewart. He's amazing in this. He's so great. Investigating the haunted house and all of the mishaps with the seance is hilarious and also like kind of scary. Like I was watching it and I felt like scared for Frank. I wanted him to be safe. Sure. And I was wondering, what is the casting process like for this film and for a film like this?
Yeah. And I do remember, Eli, you had asked me about who else was doing the commercials and stuff like that. Okay. So, I'll answer two of those. So I firmly treat my cast and crew like family, right? Like there are people that are like I will write roles for them, and the role of Frank Stewart was very seriously written for Paul Fahrenkampf. Paul Fahrenkampf was actually the guy that ended up shitting his intestines out in Witch's Brew. He played a detective in President's Day, and I just loved the guy. I loved working with him. I thought he had a great sense of humor and a really fun, dry wit. So I wrote that part for him, knowing that he could sort of play a sort of, snarky local TV reporter. Now, when we auditioned him for the movie, and even though I knew I wrote the movie for him, I still auditioned him because I wasn't sure necessarily how he was going to do it. So what we did for the audition process was we had some sides of very, like the script. The script is a script for WNUF. It's not improv. I mean, people did improv here and there, but it is still a script. And what ended up happening was Paul would come in, he would do the sides, but then we would interview him in character. And I would ask him like, okay, so you're in the River Hill Township market right now. What market were you at before? And he's like, oh, well, I was up in Buffalo. He would start responding as the character. And I can't remember if it was that audition or the first one, but the first audition Paul had he was awful. He was nervous and he I think he was trying to be. I wrote it for him knowing what was in his like what his vibe was. And I think he was trying to be something totally different. And I sort of pulled him aside. I was like, dude, I wrote this fucking movie for you. Don't overthink this. Be yourself and have fun with it. Don't be nervous. I think that's one thing that people sort of forget. Actors forget. It's you enter an audition and people want you to succeed. Because if you walk into an audition and knock it out of the park, that's fantastic. You've made my job easier. Right. And I think I understand why actors are nervous. There's a huge sense of vulnerability there. It's more just always know that the people watching you audition, they're on your side. Mm-hmm. They want you to kick ass. But I was going to say the audition process was, we did audition people with a couple little sides, but then mostly it was them improvising, asking them okay, tell me a story, tell me a time you saw a ghost, and seeing how they had that sort of storyteller sense of rancor, right? And then we also when we had Cash the Burgers, Helen Mary Ball and Brian St. August, we screen tested them together as well to make sure they actually felt like a couple. And then so that was the big thing, auditioning those folks. And then some folks for the small roles, they weren't auditions at all. It was more just this is an easy role. I know this guy can do it. We only auditioned the major roles. And then for the commercials, so the commercials were done. The commercials were not written from a standpoint. They were not written in the script, right? they were written piecemeal, one by one, and I had a couple different writers. So I wrote a bunch. My buddy Pat Stork wrote a bunch. My buddy Mike Moran wrote a bunch, and a couple other folks wrote a handful. But like I wanted to vary the writers on those to make sure it didn't feel exactly the same. For producing them, I produced most of them. I'm trying to think. So the ones that I didn't produce, the Parents Against Partying, that was done by my buddy Jim Branscombe. My buddy,
love that one.
Yeah, no, it's great. Phil's Carpet, that's my buddy Sean Jones, and then Sean actually made a movie called Camp Killer. That my wife Melissa's in as well. That's on Amazon Prime right now, streaming free. It's like sort of like a postmodern slasher movie. And so Sean did that. I think I did some of the editing or the compositing on that. The tampon commercial was written and directed by my buddy Matt Mentor, but I DP'd that. What else? I know I'm forgetting stuff. The governor, the Dandridge for governor spot. Higher taxes, guns, abortions, or gun control abortions. My buddy Andy Schwab did that one. I'm trying to think. There's a couple more. I'm totally gonna forget them. My buddy Scott McCubbin made the commercial with the fake sitcom with the alcoholic brother. I'm trying to think what else. Those were the. It's funny. Sometimes the reviews act like this was like a film made by a collective, but we had like essentially like 5 guest directors for commercials, right? So yeah.
But that just kind of lends a hand to making it feel a little bit more authentic. So it's Absolutely. You can't tell that, these commercials were clearly made, with the same mind. So it gives you that little bit of disconnect to give it a little bit more authenticity, in my opinion. Just like, the commercials for Grindhouse.
Definitely.
The commercials, the fake movie trailers. Yeah. So that's really cool. Where did these people get the inspiration for these commercials? Were they actually commercials in the past, or were they just completely fabricated? Do you know?
So I know for my process, there's two ways I did this. One was looking at resources. So I had started using there's a site called Video Blocks, which is a stock footage site that had a bunch of assets that we could use. We also used I contacted filmmakers that I knew, and then of course we shot a bunch of this stuff as well. But my buddy Jeff Herberger had been shooting video in the 80s and 90s. So I was like, Jeff, could I just see what stuff you have that you wouldn't mind me using? Jared Bookwalter, for example, I asked him if I could borrow clips from his movie Kingdom of the Vampire or Chick Boxer, and he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So long story short, we looked at resources, and I was like, what actual commercials could we build out of all this footage of people? I'm trying to think of an example. What footage can I make out of this close up of popcorn butter? So things like that. And then I'm trying to think. The other thing was we did look at a lot of old 80s commercials when I was writing the movie. So the Frank Stewart character is based off of obviously 2 people. One is or generally influenced by 2 people. Geraldo is obviously one of them. Like the whole idea of going to Al Capone's vault. But then additionally, this a local Baltimore anchor that I always thought was a little bit bitter about their circumstances in life, and that guy's experience, I basically, God bless my godmother, Mary Lou. She is a pack rat, and she has shelves upon shelves of old VHS tapes. And she had taped a bunch of old episodes of this guy's talk show. So when I was writing the screenplay, I was playing old videos from the 80s of this guy's TV show. I mean, he had specials about, is your kid wetting the bed? All these really weird, topics. And I would watch those just as sort of background noise. But sometimes the commercials I saw, I was like, oh shit, we have to have a lawyer ad, or we have to do an ad about tampons. That's obviously weird and unusual, things like that. I just started writing a running list, and I pair that with what B-roll assets we had.
Well, I like that you have a really deconstructed way of thinking of things with, coming up with titles and then building around the title. I think that that's really interesting, and I think that that's super clever.
Thank you.
It's not coming up with the story and then coming up with a shitty title. Because some movies can be really good, but their titles, it doesn't make you want to watch them. Sometimes the title is what draws you in first. So I think that that's really smart.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And that's sort of like the weird thing where it's like I tried to think about like you're making a movie about media, but knowing that the people making the media you're watching are at different skill sets. So, for example, like what you just said about the title, like when you see the late night movie is Sarcophagus. Sarcophagus is a shitty title for a movie, but I could totally imagine someone having a mummy movie with an elaborate title that the distributor was like, nobody knows what that means. Just call it Sarcophagus.
Yeah. And the one, the outer space movie,
Galaxy Pilot.
Yeah. That reminded me of, this is dating me. I'm the oldest one on the podcast, by the way. There was the best way I can, I think there was two actually. There was a laser tag cartoon. Like I think it was called Laser Tag Academy, but there was like this live action, some kind of Saturday morning laser tag thing. And the thing that was weird was that like they played like modern songs on the show. Like you would hear like Duran Duran, and then you'd hear like, and it was just so strange. But it looked like that little commercial.
You're talking about Captain Power, right?
No, I thought it was Captain Power, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd have to go look. I don't remember Captain Power having like, modern, songs on it or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it's in that vein. It looks like that, like the live action stuff. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, what I tell people about this is I got about halfway through the movie before I realized the commercials were fake. Like I thought they were. I thought that you just like the live stuff you recorded, and then you just found all these old commercials, and then halfway through, I don't remember which one it was, but I was like, oh, okay, so they've just done the whole thing. Okay, got it. So.
Yeah, the carpet one, I was really thrown off. I was like, wait a second, I've seen about 1 million of these, so this has got to be from some like local TV station. It's too good. Yeah, it's too good.
So I have the next question, but this is kind of an extension to what we had just discussed. Where did you guys find the house? Like, where's the house? Was that a buddy's house, or did you rent it? Or
no? So the house there. This is interesting. We had actually shot Book of Lore there. We shot parts of Grave Mistakes there. We shot what else? So and then. Maybe nothing in Witches Brew. But anyway, it is a currently vacant. I don't know, although at the time it was vacant. Rectory. So they were where priests lived, and it was part of a Catholic high school, a Catholic hospital, in Baltimore County. And our buddy Mike Baldwin, his dad was the head of this hospital, and they weren't using the space. So we asked them like, hey, can we shoot a movie there? Because we'd shot a bunch there already. And they were like, yeah, sure. No problem. And it was perfect because it was empty. Right. And then we got in there a couple days earlier to throw, sheets over everything. So it looked like an old haunted house. Like, it's like swirled leaves around. I mean, but it was huge. I mean, literally it was like, it's at the height of it, you'd probably have like 15 to 20 priests living there. So we were really lucky. I mean, it's a great location. Like without that location, that movie doesn't work. Like if you put that location in just a house in the suburbs, it's not half the movie.
Right.
So.
Well, this is the official question now. So we were talking about earlier about the vinyl. I'm calling it a crossover. I don't know what you tie in, whatever. But the WNUF TV 28 presents Frank Stewart Investigates Halloween LP is released by TerraVision Records. It was funny. I was watching the movie for like the 1,000th time, and I threw up a little. I made a little, put Frank Stewart's picture on a milk carton and put it up on Twitter. It's like, please come home or something. And Jimmy was like, hey, that we released this, right? And I clicked it and I was like, what? So he actually was the one that turned me on to it, and it's cool. It's just awesome. So how did that come about? I mean, that's. Again, dating me, I remember the, We Are the World vinyl, and they even used to release vinyl for like in newspapers. There was like McDonald's had a vinyl that came out, and it was like the Big Mac song, and if yours finished, you won $1 million or like vinyl tie-ins was like that was a thing. So doing this, and then also you're talking about the first couple releases were just VHS. It's just a perfect tie-in. So how did that come about? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? Or
so Ryan from TerraVision hit me up, and he was like, hey man, I love WNUF, and I want to put out the soundtrack because I'm starting a horror soundtrack label. And I told him, I was like, Ryan, I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Thank you. But the soundtrack for WNUF wouldn't be a soundtrack. There's no soundtrack except like the songs that are in the commercials. Like that would be, I don't think anyone would actually want to listen to 30-second songs. Like, I mean, maybe they would, I don't know. But most of that was, royalty free audio, it's like stock music. So like we couldn't even release that officially anyway. So, but as I was, as he told me this, I was like, the opportunity existed for something. I was like, I collect spoken word records. Like I love old like horror radio show vinyl, like scary sounds, special like sound effects records. I collect that stuff. I mean, I have a huge collection of that stuff. And I told Ryan, I was like, look, it's on my bucket list to write a spoken word horror record, and like I can come up with an idea to figure out like how to make that a sequel / prequel to WNUF. Like it'd be really fun. So Ryan was like, yes, I was actually hoping you'd pitch me that. I didn't want to sort of like, he's like, Ryan was like, I didn't want to ask you to do that. But that's what I was sort of pitching, because he's like, Ryan and I are very much kindred spirits. And subsequently since that project, I did another spoken word record that's in the works with them, not WNUF related, but a similar type content album. And then I've been cutting all their videos for social media. So I cut all their promos for all the record releases. But anyway, so we basically pitched in the idea of the this record is being used to raise money to find Frank. And he loved that. And then we broke it down into two sides, knowing that like, Frank could have been the whole record, but I thought I didn't want to give up the burgers. I think the burgers for me are just really fun characters. So, side A is all Frank's, the audio from Frank's Halloween themed news packages from like 84, 85, 86. And then the other side is excerpts from Sounds of the Spirit World, which was the hard to find 1976 LP from the Burgers. So yeah, I mean, we had a really fun time doing it. I mean, that was probably the most fun I've ever had. Because it was such low pressure. Like, when you're making a movie, you have to worry about things like, how much more daylight do I have before we finish this scene? What's the call time? Are these people going to schedule correctly? With the record, I could record people one at a time. Scheduling wasn't really that much of an issue. I could go to them if I needed to. So it was really relaxed and it was a lot of fun.
Well, I love it.
That does sound really fun. And you guys have come up with a sequel for this one and even started a GoFundMe. So tell us as much as you can about the sequel and where people can go to give you money for it.
Okay, so basically, I'll put it to you guys this way. As soon as I finished the edit of WNUF before I started running it through the VCR, it was really sad for me because I've never had more fun like creating or coming up with ideas like I did when we were making WNUF. Like it was a blast. Like I really loved making that movie. And when it was over, it didn't feel like it was over because I started thinking about these characters as things that lived on. Like in my head, I know exactly what happened, to the lead actor on Galaxy Pilot, or I know what happened to Veronica Stanzi, right? And those stories existed in my head, but it's like, do people actually give a shit? And then as I saw WNUF become popular, I was like, no, I think people actually would give a shit. And like the sequel album, when that came out, that was really cool. And people were hungry for more stuff. So over the last 2 years, I've been slowly but surely like compiling assets to make a sequel to WNUF. Like, so new stuff for new commercials, figuring out plot beats and things that I could do with the characters. So what I'll tell you is this, and there's more detail online, but I'm going to try to give you guys a little bit of some more meat to what the sequel is. So the WNUF sequel is a what I would consider a spiritual sequel, right? What WNUF Halloween Special is the 80s. This is what I'm trying to do in the 90s. So the sequel will take place in the 1990s.
Oh, I'm so excited!
Characters will return, and not even characters that you'd think will return. Like, I mean, Veronica Stanzi will be in the movie. Like Nicolette Lafay, who plays her, will be in the sequel. But also through some creative means, Paul Fahrenkopf as Frank Stewart will be back. The Burgers will be back.
Nice, yay!
There's some really cool things. Like, how do I put this? If you like the original, you're going to be happy with this. And if you grew up watching basic cable in the 1990s, you're really going to like this too. It's a really unique, weird movie, and I'm excited to see where I'm going to take the story. For the elevator pitch for this one, I would just say this. Do you guys remember the show Sightings?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and if not, maybe In Search Of might be a better analogy or something like that, or like Mystery, Magic, and Miracles or something. Imagine if Jerry Springer hosted an episode of Sightings.
Oh man.
And that's like, that is like the genesis of what I'm trying to tell you guys. So like for me, the 1990s, media became more sophisticated in the 1990s. You have the real acceleration of the 24-hour news cycle. You have extreme marketing to children. You have sensationalism in a heightened sense of the word that you hadn't seen before. I mean, this is the era of, you know, the O.J. Simpson car case. This is the Tanya Harding. All that stuff is going to be encapsulated in this film in a way that still is appropriate to the universe we created, and also just like horror kitsch and Halloween kitsch. So.
That's amazing. I'm so excited.
Oh my God. And I'm a terrible business.
All you had to do was say 90s for me, and I'm in.
Well, I was going to say, I totally forgot the call to action. It's on GoFundMe. So it's if you go to GoFundMe.com and just search WNUF or Halloween Special, it'll come up. And some people wondered why we're doing GoFundMe. The reason why we're doing GoFundMe is because of for a couple of reasons. One, they take the lowest percentage out, and I want all the money to go on the screen. But then additionally, Kickstarter and Indiegogo have time limits for their campaigns, and I'm going to let this campaign go for longer than most campaigns, just because now it is so difficult to get eyeballs on social media posts.
Sure.
That I just want to have a longer life cycle for the campaign.
Well, we will undoubtedly help you and post it everywhere.
Awesome.
That way we can get you all of the support that we absolutely can drum up for you with our followers, for sure. We, support projects that have passion behind them is my, if people are dedicated and people want to work hard, like, why wouldn't you support it? So, so speaking of online and social media, where can we find you?
Sure, yeah. So like I'm on Facebook. Just search Chris LaMartina, LaMartina. And if we have a bunch of mutual friends, I'll probably accept it. If you don't have many mutual friends, just drop me a message saying, hey, you're a WNUF fan or something, and obviously I'll accept it. On Twitter, I think it's twitter.com/just Chris LaMartina. I don't think there's a dot in there. And then Instagram, it's Chris.LaMartina. So yeah, like I'm always posting weird stuff on Instagram. I'm not as active on Twitter as I should be, but it is what it is.
That's how we are, actually. So
yeah, same.
Well, cool, man. Well, we're at about 57 minutes. So that's pretty good.
We didn't even talk about Cthulhu.
I was thinking about that once I had the questions wrote, and I was like, I think I'm missing something. So I mean, we can hop in real quick. Where is that in the chronological? I think I got it confused. Did that one come after WNUF?
It did, yeah. So we were. This is insane. This will tell you about just how batshit crazy we are. WNUF, we shot in August and a couple days from August to October in 2012, and then April 2013 we were shooting Call Girl. And we were editing WNUF while we were doing pre-production on Call Girl of Cthulhu. So Call Girl of Cthulhu is our H.P. Lovecraft horror sex comedy. It's an insanely gory film with lots of crazy creature effects. If you like Frank Henenlotter movies, like Basket Case or Frankenhooker, I think you'd really dig that.
Nice.
It's how I met my wife. She is the title role, and that's how we fell in love making that movie.
That's amazing.
I love it. That's adorable.
And there's a ton of stuff like that, like the Blu-ray that Pop Cinema and Camp Motion Pictures put out. We have a whole making of documentary. I think it's called Lights, Tentacles, Action, and it's a really fun movie. I mean, like, I think if you're familiar with the work of H.P. Lovecraft, but you also just like sort of like really gross, gooey horror comedy, you'll get a kick out of it.
Oh, I'm in.
What was the budget for that one?
That was for $40,000. So that was the biggest budget we ever had. And the lion's share of the budget went to special effects. And when you see the movie, you'll know why. I mean, we spent $11,000 just on special effects for that movie. And then, yeah, so that's I would say if you wanted, like, what is the epic, Call Girl Cthulhu is the epic.
Nice. And then I saw, I saw, I think from Jimmy's post, the one that you have in post right now, is that a full length?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So it's called "What Happens Next Will Scare You,"
right?
And it's a clickbait horror satire. So basically, the plot is this: a group of imagine like folks that write for BuzzFeed, right? They're voting on the top 13 scariest viral videos, and an early entry into their night's listicle ends up being a record that supposedly brings back evil spirits and spirits of the devil, spirits of the dead. So like all the monsters from these viral videos come back to the clickbait office to wreak havoc.
Nice.
So it's an anthology movie where all the segments are found footage horror shorts. It's crazy stuff. It's like, we have like a Vatican sanctioned how to perform an exorcism tape. We've got a teen vlogger that's gradually being cursed. It's like so it's things like that the whole movie, it's funny, and we haven't talked about this thematically too much yet, but the movie is really about where Jimmy and I felt our career was going toward the end of our last couple of years, where it's like, were we making meaningful art, or were we just sort of doing jazz hands to stay relevant? And I think that's something that I think both of us have really tried to fight against. We don't just want to make horror movies to make horror movies. We want to do something that's actually like impactful. And What Happens Next Will Scare You is literally these folks in an office deciding like, how do we stay relevant when really it's just kind of like, sad to be sensational just to be sensational. So I think for anyone who's thoughtful will see that movie and get some nice little emotional catharsis out of it.
That's awesome.
Well, that's cool. So then I guess the WNUF sequel, is that the next big thing you're working on, or do you have anything else?
So What Happens Next Will Scare You should be it's in color correction and digital compositing stuff right now. Hopefully that'll premiere in the spring or next October if we want to wait that long. WNUF Halloween Sequel, as we're calling it right now, that will hopefully start shooting in spring or summer of next year. And that's the big thing. I mean, like, full disclosure, it's hard to make these movies as somebody with like, a mortgage and a full-time job to like sort of make the time to make these things. But we do it because we love it. And, it's, if you really want to do something, you make time for it. So,
yeah. Well, that's awesome. We're really excited. The one in post sounds pretty funny. Of course the WNUF sequel, that was one of the few films over the last, 5 or 10 years where it's like, okay, I'm down for a sequel for that. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, so thanks for coming by, man. Thanks for chatting, give us a little bit of a scoop, and this will probably air Friday. So between now and then I'll get the link and post it in the notes and stuff, and we'll post a thing on Instagram about it and everything. So, yeah, man. So appreciate it, and
I appreciate it too.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, cheers, y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. Bye.
All right, so that was our interview, and the girls pointed out that before we went to the interview, I totally butchered his name. I didn't even put the la at the beginning of Martina. So it's been a long day, guys. Like after work, I had to run to the chiropractor, then I had to run to the store, and then I come here and just
excuses.
I know.
Excuses.
It's just the law. Jeez.
So, it's just a law. We did say that we were going to try and just on purpose say his name like 10 different ways, but.
And we lived it.
You took that very seriously.
Yeah, we lived it. You put it into the universe,
and it's funny
true.
Because it's not even like on purpose. Like I'm trying to say it, and it's just I just fail as a human. So, but yeah,
okay.
So that was Chris LaMartina, and he was awesome, and we're very excited for the WNUF sequel. I'll just throw that on at lunch. Like it's just background. It's kind of up there with like the Lost Boys now. Like I'll watch it at any time. It's just like comfort food, I'll just watch it just to watch it. And, but now that he said that they released it on VHS, I got to find one of those some bitches.
Gotta get it.
So yeah. So we're going to do the social stuff real quick.
Yeah. Find more of our ramblings at Music City Horror on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, You can download our podcasts wherever you're listening to it right now. So iTunes, not on Spotify yet. But yeah, you can find us pretty much anywhere at Music City Horror.
And I think we'll probably record again between now and then, unless something happens like this past month. But in the event that we do not, the new Joe Bob special will be airing on Thanksgiving night.
Woo! Yes.
And so I don't know all the details on that. So if you just go follow him on Twitter, he has all the movies and stuff and all that. We also partnered with Shudder. So if you do not have a Shudder subscription, if you sign up and use the code MCH, short for Music City Horror, should be easy to remember, you get a 30-day free trial. So that is a cool thing that he's letting us extend, or they are letting us extend to you guys. So definitely worth the money. I mean, it's $5 a month and you get awesome stuff. It's just really hard to beat. And they'll sometimes do a thing where if you pay for the year, you get it for whatever, I don't know, $40 or something. Like you save money by paying for the full year or whatever. So, I mean, it's really cheap for the amount of stuff that they give you. Like they had like 3 or 4 of the Halloween movies last month. And I mean, it's an awesome deal.
It's so worth it. It's like the best $5 that I spend a month. It's so worth it.
And they brought back Joe Bob, so what's not to like?
Yes, I know they really should charge more for what they give us, but yeah. I'm glad they don't, and it's amazing.
Yeah. So that wraps up our show with the three-man crew, and hopefully we'll have all 4 of us again next time. And so thanks for reading our Halloween horror movie list that we did. I'm glad that we only did the one list this year because it was a lot.
It was a lot.
I think
it was a lot of fun, but
we jumped in last year like, screw it, let's do 2 lists, and it was like, oh man. So
and now it's like a good resource for people, if they're looking for things for their kids to watch. But that's a good thing to do once and then not do again.
Yeah. So
it's good.
So anyways, so Kayla, KB, and Eli, and thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.